The evening does not arrive suddenly here. It comes slowly, as if it has been walking for a long time across fields and wooden roads, careful not to disturb anything too quickly. The light begins to soften first, not all at once, but in gentle stages. Shadows stretch longer against the ground. The edges of buildings lose their sharpness and begin to rest into the fading glow. In the town, life does not stop. It only quiets. There is a feeling in the air that everything is returning home. The streets are made of packed earth and worn stone. During the day, they carry footsteps, wagon wheels, voices, and the steady rhythm of daily work. But now, as the sun lowers itself behind the distant trees, those same streets begin to empty slowly, as if the town itself is breathing out after a long day. A few doors remain open. Not wide open, just slightly, allowing warm light from oil lamps to spill out into the cooling air. That light is soft and steady. It flickers gently, shaped by small flames inside glass and metal lamps that hang from wooden beams or rest on rough tables. Inside the homes, there is movement, but it is unhurried. Someone sets down a wooden bowl after finishing a simple meal. The sound is quiet against the table. A chair shifts slightly across the floor. Somewhere in the house, water is poured carefully into a clay cup. Every sound feels close, contained, and peaceful. Outside, the wind moves slowly through the town. It is not a strong wind. It is the kind that barely touches the leaves, making them whisper instead of rustle. It passes over rooftops, over fences, over fields that sit just beyond the edge of the homes. Those fields are resting now. During the day, they carried labor. Hands worked the soil. Tools moved steadily through earth and crop rows. But now, the land is still. It holds the memory of effort without showing it. A horse stands tied near a wooden post beside a barn. Its head lowers slightly. It no longer pulls against its reins. It is simply there, breathing in the cool air of evening. Somewhere farther down the road, a lantern is lifted. A man walks slowly, his steps unhurried. He does not rush. There is nowhere urgent left to go. His presence blends into the quiet of the town. The light he carries moves gently with him, creating a small circle of warmth in the growing dusk. Windows begin to glow more steadily now. Not bright, but steady. Like small, patient fires holding back the night just enough to make the indoors feel safe and familiar. Inside those rooms, families gather in simple ways. A table is cleared. A cloth is folded. A pot is left near the edge of a cooling hearth. The smell of wood smoke drifts through the air. It is faint, not heavy. It carries the memory of cooking, of warmth, of earlier hours when fire was needed more strongly. Now it rises upward and away, blending into the darkening sky. The sky itself changes slowly. Blue fades into deeper blue, and then into a soft, quiet gray. Stars begin to appear one by one, not all at once. They feel patient, as if they have always been there but are only now choosing to be seen. In one small house near the edge of town, a candle is placed carefully on a table. Its flame bends slightly, then steadies. Around it, the room becomes smaller, more intimate. Wooden walls hold in the warmth. The floor creaks faintly when someone moves, a reminder of age and time and repeated use. A simple meal has just ended. Bread, perhaps. Stew. Something warm and plain. Nothing elaborate. The kind of food that feels familiar rather than impressive. Bowls are set aside. Hands rest quietly afterward, no longer busy. Outside, the town continues to soften. The sounds of daytime have almost fully disappeared. There are no carts rolling now. No calls across distances. Only occasional doors closing gently. Occasionally, a distant dog shifts position and settles again. The night is not empty. It is full, but in a quiet way. Full of rest, of pauses, of lives that have slowed down but not vanished. Along the street, lanterns are spaced at uneven intervals. Each one marks a small island of light. Between them are stretches of shadow where the road becomes less visible, but still known. People walk through these spaces without fear, guided by memory as much as by sight. In the distance, beyond the town's edge, trees stand in still formation. They are darker now, almost blending together. But they are not threatening. They feel like part of the same calm world. Their branches do not move much anymore. The wind has eased further, as if it, too, has chosen to rest. Inside another home, someone leans back in a wooden chair. The chair creaks softly, then becomes still again. A hand rests on the armrest. The room is quiet except for the faint sound of a candle burning down slowly. Time feels different here. Not measured in urgency, but in presence. In the slow passing of light from lamp to shadow, from shadow to deeper shadow. A child may already be lying down in another room. Not speaking anymore. Not asking questions. Just listening to the faint sounds of the house settling. The feeling of blankets pulled close. The safe weight of a wooden ceiling above. Outside, the last hint of sunset disappears completely. Now the town belongs to night. Not in a harsh or sudden way, but in a gentle agreement. As if everything has quietly decided that this is the time for rest. And so it continues. Soft light in windows. Slow footsteps on worn paths. The distant comfort of smoke rising and fading into sky. A town that no longer moves quickly, but instead breathes slowly, evenly, as though it is finally remembering how to be still. The night has begun, and it does not hurry. It simply arrives, and stays, and holds everything gently in place. The last traces of evening do not vanish quickly. They fade in a way that feels almost careful, as if the light itself is choosing where to go, deciding not to leave all at once. A soft dimness spreads across the streets, touching the wooden fences, the stone paths, the edges of rooftops. Inside the homes, the glow of lamps becomes the center of everything. Each flame feels more important now that the world outside has grown darker. The rooms no longer feel like parts of a larger town. Instead, each house becomes its own small world, held together by warmth, quiet breath, and the steady presence of light. A door closes gently somewhere down the street. The sound is not sharp. It is softened by distance, by air, by the thickness of night beginning to settle in layers. After it closes, there is only stillness again. Not empty stillness, but full stillness, the kind that feels lived in. In one home, a man sits near a fireplace that has nearly burned down to glowing embers. The fire does not roar anymore. It whispers. Small red points pulse faintly beneath gray ash, giving off just enough heat to keep the room comfortable. The man does not stir them. He simply watches, as if the act of watching is enough. Nearby, a kettle rests slightly to the side of the hearth. It is no longer boiling. It is cooling slowly, the metal holding onto warmth a little longer than everything else. The faint smell of tea or herbs still lingers in the air, soft and familiar, like a memory that has not fully faded. Across the room, shadows gather in the corners. They are not frightening. They feel natural, almost expected. The light from the fire does not fight them. It simply exists alongside them, sharing the space peacefully. In another part of the town, a woman moves quietly through her kitchen. Her steps are slow and practiced. She knows where everything is without looking too closely. A wooden shelf. A ceramic bowl. A folded cloth. Her hands find things gently, without urgency. Water is poured into a basin. The sound is soft, almost like rain falling far away. She washes her hands slowly, not because she is in a hurry, but because the night encourages slowness. Everything feels like it should be done with care. Outside her window, the street is nearly empty now. Only one lantern remains lit at this stretch of road, its flame flickering slightly when a breeze passes through. The light bends for a moment, then steadies again, as if it understands its role is to remain calm. Farther away, a barn creaks faintly. Wood adjusting to the coolness of night. The sound is brief, then gone. Inside the barn, animals shift in their sleep. A horse exhales deeply. A cow moves once, then becomes still again. The town is no longer active in the way daytime demands. It is something softer now. Something more internal. Even the air feels different. It carries less heat. Less dust. More stillness. It moves slowly between buildings, over fields, through open spaces, without rushing anywhere. In one small upstairs room, a candle burns beside a bed. The bed is simple. Wooden frame. Hand-woven blanket. Nothing ornate. It is not meant to impress, only to rest in. The candlelight touches the walls gently, revealing faint textures in the wood that are not visible during the day. A person lies down fully now. Not speaking. Not moving much. Only adjusting slightly under the blanket to find comfort. The world outside the window is almost completely dark, except for the faint outline of rooftops against the night sky. Stars continue to gather above the town. More of them appear as time passes, filling the sky slowly, like quiet thoughts forming one by one. They do not move quickly. They do not change. They simply remain, distant and steady. Downstairs, the rest of the house grows quieter. A chair is pushed in gently. A final cup is placed on a shelf. A door to another room is left slightly open, not out of forgetfulness, but out of habit, as if the house prefers to breathe gently through small openings. The night deepens further. Now even the faint sounds begin to thin out. There are fewer footsteps. Fewer small adjustments of objects. Fewer signs of movement. What remains is mostly presence, the feeling that people are still here, even when they are not moving. Outside, a narrow path leads out of town toward open fields. It is barely visible now. Only occasionally does the light from a distant window reach it. Along this path, the ground is uneven but familiar to those who walk it. It has been walked many times before, in daylight, in twilight, and now in full night. A small gust of wind passes through. It moves through grass, through fence gaps, through tree branches at the edge of the settlement. The trees respond with a slow, soft sway, then return to stillness again. The wind does not stay long. It passes through as if it is only checking in, then continues onward beyond the town. Inside another home, a book is closed gently. The sound is barely audible. A hand rests on the cover for a moment after it closes, as if marking the end of something quiet and personal. The book is placed on a table near the bed, aligned carefully, not hurriedly. The room becomes still again. Only the candle remains, and even it begins to shrink slowly as wax melts away. In these moments, time does not feel like progress. It feels like settling. Like everything is slowly finding its place and choosing not to move unless necessary. Across the town, more lights go out one by one. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But gradually, in a pattern that feels natural. A window grows darker. A flame is covered. A room loses its final glow and becomes part of the night. And yet, the town does not feel empty. It feels complete. As if it was always meant to be like this at this hour. The darkness is not heavy. It is soft. It rests over rooftops and streets like a quiet blanket, holding everything without pressure. Somewhere, a final lantern is lifted and carried indoors. The street it leaves behind becomes fully dark for the first time that night. But even then, it does not feel abandoned. It feels simply at rest. The night continues to settle. Not rushing. Not changing too quickly. Just deepening, gently, across every surface, every home, every quiet corner of the colonial town. And everything remains calm. Everything remains still. Everything continues in silence, as if the world has decided there is nowhere else it needs to be. The night does not grow darker in a sudden way. It deepens slowly, like ink spreading through water, patient and steady, until the entire town is held within it. The rooftops are no longer clearly shaped. The roads are no longer fully defined. Everything becomes softer at the edges, as if the world has decided it no longer needs sharpness. Inside the homes, the last small lights continue to fade. A candle shortens. A lamp dims. A fire turns from visible flame into glowing warmth hidden under ash. Even when the light is nearly gone, the feeling of warmth remains in the room for a while longer, as if it is reluctant to leave. Now, most people are resting. Not in a hurried sleep, but in the slow surrender of bodies that have finished their day. The kind of sleep that arrives naturally, without invitation, when everything is finally still enough to allow it. Breathing becomes the most noticeable sound inside the homes. Soft, even, unbroken. In one room, a window is slightly open. Just enough for cool air to enter without disturbing the stillness inside. The air carries the scent of distant fields, faint earth, and the memory of plants that spent the day under sunlight. The curtain near the window moves very slightly. A slow motion, almost unnoticeable. Not a full sway. Just a gentle lift and fall, like the town itself is breathing through the room. Outside, the streets are now almost completely empty. The lanterns that remain are few, and even those are dimmer than before. Their light no longer pushes back the darkness fully. Instead, it simply marks presence. A quiet reminder that the world is still here, even if it is resting. A wooden sign above a small shop creaks faintly. Not from urgency, but from the slow cooling of wood in night air. It is a sound that belongs to this hour. A sound that does not ask for attention. Far beyond the town's edge, the fields lie completely still. Grass rests flat in some places, slightly raised in others. Nothing moves quickly anymore. Even the insects seem quieter, their presence reduced to faint, distant rhythm rather than constant sound. The sky above is now fully open. Stars are no longer appearing one by one. They are simply there, already present, covering the night with a quiet, steady brightness that does not change. The moon, pale and calm, sits above the horizon. It does not feel bright in a sharp way. It feels softened, as if filtered through distance. Its light is gentle enough that it does not disturb sleep. Instead, it simply rests on rooftops, trees, and empty roads. Inside one house, a clock ticks slowly. Each tick is spaced evenly, unhurried, almost blending into the silence rather than interrupting it. The sound becomes part of the room's rhythm, like breathing or distant wind. A sleeping person shifts slightly. A small movement beneath blankets. Then stillness returns again. The room does not react. It simply continues holding quiet. In another home, an ember still glows faintly in a fireplace. Almost gone now. Just a small point of red-orange light buried in ash. It does not flicker much anymore. It simply exists, holding on to its final warmth. The town feels suspended in this moment. Not active, not empty, but suspended. As if time itself has slowed down to match the rhythm of sleeping houses and resting streets. Outside, a small animal crosses a yard. Its steps are careful and light. It does not linger. It moves through the space as if familiar with every shadow. After a few moments, it disappears into darkness again, leaving no trace behind except the memory of movement. The wind returns briefly. Not strong. Not cold. Just present. It moves through tree branches, through narrow gaps between buildings, across fences, and empty pathways. It does not stay. It simply passes through, as it has done many times before. And then, silence returns again. Not absolute silence, but the kind that feels complete for this place and this time. Even the distant sounds seem to rest now. The world is no longer speaking loudly in any direction. Inside the homes, sleep deepens. Dreams begin quietly, without urgency. They arrive like soft thoughts drifting through the mind, unshaped and gentle. There is no sharpness in them. Only flow. The town continues to exist through all of this. Not changing quickly. Not needing to. Just resting under the wide night sky, held gently between earth and stars. And in this deep hour, everything feels steady. Everything feels held. Everything continues in a calm that does not ask for attention, only presence. There is a moment in the night when even silence seems to become softer. It is not a new silence. It is the same quiet that has been growing since evening. But now it feels deeper, as if it has settled fully into every corner of the town, into every wooden beam, every stone path, every closed window. Nothing in the town is truly awake now. And yet, nothing feels absent. The houses still hold life inside them, but it is the kind of life that rests without movement. Breathing continues. Hearts continue. Time continues. But all of it moves gently, without resistance, without urgency. Outside, the streets are almost unrecognizable in the dark. Not because they are gone, but because they are softened beyond detail. A path that was clear in daylight now exists more as a suggestion than a visible shape. Familiarity replaces sight. Memory replaces light. A single lantern still burns near the edge of town. It is low now. Its flame is smaller than before, leaning slightly within its glass enclosure. It does not struggle. It simply continues, quietly doing what it has always done, without expectation of attention. The air is cooler at this hour. Not cold in a harsh way, but gently cool, like a hand resting calmly on still water. It moves through the town slowly, finding its way into open spaces, between shutters, under doorways. Inside one home, a sleeping figure turns slightly. The movement is slow, natural, and then stillness returns. The blanket rises and falls with steady breathing. The room remains unchanged by it, as if the house has already learned how to hold such quiet motion without disturbance. A wooden floorboard in another room settles with a faint sound. Not a creak of strain, but a soft adjustment, like the house itself is exhaling. It is a sound so small it almost feels imagined, and then it disappears into silence again. In the hearth of one household, the last ember fades further. What was once a small glow is now barely visible. A faint memory of heat remains, but even that is slowly dissolving into ash. The fireplace no longer holds fire. It holds only the impression of warmth that once was. Above the town, the sky feels wider now. Without the distractions of daytime or evening, it becomes something vast and uninterrupted. The stars are steady. They do not shift or blink in any noticeable way. They simply remain, distant and patient. The moonlight moves gently across rooftops. It does not create strong contrast. It smooths everything it touches. Roof tiles, chimneys, tree branches, fences all become softened under its quiet illumination. There is a stillness in the town that feels complete. Not empty. Complete. As if every sound that needed to happen has already happened, and every movement that needed to be made has already been made. Even time seems to slow further. Not stopping, but stretching. In one house, a child's room is entirely still. A small bed. A simple wooden chair. A toy resting on the floor where it was left earlier in the evening. Everything is in place, not because it was arranged perfectly, but because it naturally came to rest there. The night outside presses gently against the window. But it does not press in a way that disturbs. It simply exists, like a quiet presence sharing the same space. Far beyond the town, the land opens into wider darkness. Fields, trees, and distant hills form layers that cannot be clearly separated now. They blend into one continuous shape under the sky, unified by night. A faint animal sound appears somewhere in the distance. It is brief. Not repeated. Not answered. It simply exists for a moment, then disappears again into the quiet. Inside the town, no one reacts. Because there is nothing to react to. Everything remains calm. Everything remains unchanged. A small draft moves through an open crack in one window. It touches the edge of a curtain, lifts it slightly, then lets it fall again. The motion is slow enough that it feels like part of the night itself breathing. In another room, a candle has finally gone out. No flame remains. Only a thin trace of smoke rises for a moment, then dissolves into the air. The room becomes fully dark, but not unfamiliar. The darkness is known here. It is comfortable. It belongs. And still, the town holds together in quiet unity. Not through activity, but through rest. Through the shared stillness of every home, every street, every empty path. The deepest hour of night continues without change. Not demanding anything. Not asking anything. Just existing, gently and evenly, as everything in the colonial town rests beneath the wide, silent sky. The night does not loosen its hold yet. It remains steady, as if it has decided to stay a little longer, covering the town in the same calm weight it has carried for hours. Nothing changes quickly. Nothing needs to. The darkness is still complete, but it is no longer growing deeper. Instead, it feels settled, like a blanket that has finally found its resting shape over every roof, every street, every quiet field beyond the town. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. It is not a restless sleep. It is not heavy or uneasy. It is soft, continuous, and unbroken, like a long breath held gently in still air. A man in one house turns slightly in his sleep. His movement is small enough that it does not disturb the room. The bed remains steady. The blanket shifts only a little, then becomes still again. The house does not react. It has learned this rhythm of night. Outside, the last lantern in the distance flickers once. Not strongly. Not dramatically. Just a small hesitation in its flame, as if it is considering whether to continue or not. Then it steadies again, holding on to its final light. The wind is almost gone now. What remains of it is only suggestion and occasional movement through branches, a faint passing through empty space between buildings. It does not stay long enough to be called presence. It is more like memory of movement. The sky above the town is unchanged. Stars remain in their places, quiet and distant. The moon has moved slightly across its path, but so slowly that it feels almost still. Its light continues to rest gently on everything below, never pressing, never disturbing. In one home, a small hourglass sits on a shelf. It is not being watched. It is not being turned. The sand inside continues its slow descent, grain by grain, marking time in a way no one is paying attention to now. It becomes part of the room's silence, not separate from it. A wooden beam in the ceiling shifts almost imperceptibly. Not from stress. Not from damage. Just the natural settling of an old structure resting through the cold hours. The sound is so faint it almost blends with imagination. The town exists in this suspended state. Not asleep as a single thing, but sleeping as many small lives sharing the same quiet. Each home carries its own stillness. Each room holds its own soft darkness. Each person rests in their own slow rhythm. And yet, together, they form one peaceful whole. Far outside the town, the horizon begins to soften very slightly. Not enough to be called morning. Not enough to change the night. Only a faint easing at the very edge of the world, where darkness meets distance. It is so subtle that most would not notice it at all. In one house, a person exhales deeply in sleep. The breath is long and even, then followed by another. The pattern continues, steady and calm. The room remains unchanged by it, as if it has always known this rhythm. A cat, somewhere within a home, shifts position quietly. It curls closer into itself, finding warmth in its own shape, then becomes still again. No sound follows. The town continues to rest. Not fading. Not waking. Just continuing in the same peaceful stillness that has held it through the entire night. The lantern that remained lit for so long is now barely glowing. Its light is reduced to a faint suggestion, almost blending into the darkness around it. It no longer pushes the night away. It simply exists within it. The fields beyond the town are fully still. Grass lies unmoving. Trees stand without motion. The land feels deeply quiet, as if it is also resting alongside the town. Time passes, but without urgency. Without emphasis. Without change that demands attention. And then, in the far distance, something shifts almost invisibly. The sky does not brighten yet. The stars do not disappear. The moon does not change its presence. But there is a feeling barely there, almost unnoticeable that the night is nearing its end, though it has not yet decided to leave. The town does not respond to this. It simply continues to rest. Houses remain still. Streets remain empty. Windows remain dark. And in this deep, unbroken calm, the colonial town holds onto its quiet sleep, waiting gently for morning that has not yet arrived. The night does not end yet, but it begins to soften in a way that is almost impossible to notice at first. Not a change of color. Not a change of sound. Only a feeling, quiet and distant, like the world slowly remembering that it will soon wake again. The sky still looks dark above the colonial town, still full of stars, still holding the moon in its steady place. Nothing disappears. Nothing shifts in any clear way. And yet, something feels different in the spaces between everything. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. People remain wrapped in the deep calm of the night. Breathing stays even. Rooms stay still. The warmth inside the houses lingers in a way that feels separate from time itself. In one room, a person turns their head slightly on a pillow. There is no waking. Only a small adjustment, as if the body is briefly aware of its own comfort before returning to stillness again. Outside, the town remains quiet. But the darkness is no longer as absolute as it was earlier in the night. It has become thinner, almost imperceptibly. Not lighter, not brighter, just less heavy. A distant bird shifts on a branch far beyond the town. It does not sing. Not yet. It only moves once, gently, then becomes still again. Even the smallest signs of life seem to wait, as if listening for something that has not fully arrived. The last remaining lantern in the town has nearly faded. Its glow is now very faint, barely holding shape within its glass enclosure. It no longer illuminates the street. It only marks a small point of presence in the vast quiet. The wind returns once more, but even gentler than before. It passes through the town like a slow breath, touching rooftops, sliding along fences, moving through empty paths without urgency. It does not disturb anything. It only passes through. In one house, a curtain lifts slightly again. But this time, something different is present in the air beyond the window. A subtle shift. Not light, not yet. But the suggestion that light is preparing itself somewhere beyond the horizon. The fields beyond the town remain still, but they are no longer as dark as before. The darkness there feels less dense, as if it is beginning to loosen its grip. Inside the homes, sleep remains deep. But there is a slight change in its texture now. It feels lighter than before, as if the night is no longer holding everything as tightly as it once did. A man breathes out slowly in his sleep. The sound blends into the room and fades again. Nothing else moves. Above the town, the stars are still visible. But their sharpness begins to soften very slightly, as if the air between earth and sky is becoming less thick. The moon continues its slow journey, unchanged in appearance, yet now sharing the sky with a feeling of transition that cannot be seen directly. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, there is the faintest hint of change. Not color. Not shape. Only the earliest suggestion that darkness is no longer alone. In one home, a small ember in a fireplace has finally gone out completely. No glow remains. Only ash and cooling stone. The room is fully dark now, but it is not unfamiliar darkness. It is the kind that feels settled and complete. The town remains in this in-between state. Not night as it was before. Not morning yet. Something resting between the two, where time moves so slowly it feels almost paused. A single dog in the distance shifts position and lies back down. No sound follows. The town remains undisturbed. And then, very gently, almost without permission from awareness itself, the sky begins to change. Not brightening. Not revealing color. Only softening at its deepest edge, where the horizon meets the world. It is the first hint that night is nearing its end, though it still holds on with calm patience. Inside the houses, sleep continues. But it is now closer to the surface than before. Lighter. Softer. More easily carried. The colonial town remains still beneath the wide sky, resting in the final quiet moments before morning, as the night slowly begins to loosen its hold, without sound, without rush, and without resistance. The change does not announce itself. It does not arrive with sound, or movement, or any clear beginning. It simply becomes present. Somewhere along the horizon, the darkness is no longer as complete as it was. It is still night in most of the sky, but the edges of the world begin to soften, as if the earth is slowly opening its eyes after a long rest. The colonial town remains quiet. Every house is still holding sleep. Every window is still dark. Every street is still empty. And yet, the feeling of the night has changed. It no longer feels like something that is holding everything tightly. It feels like something that is gently releasing its hold, slowly, carefully, without disturbance. Inside one home, a person breathes a little differently. Not waking. Only shifting within sleep, as if the body senses a change it does not need to understand. The air in the room feels slightly different now. Not warmer. Not colder. Just lighter. Outside, the first suggestion of color begins to appear in the sky, far beyond the rooftops. It is not visible as a clear line at first. It is more like a quiet thinning of darkness, where the deepest black begins to soften into deep blue. The stars are still there. But they feel more distant now, less sharp, as if they are slowly stepping back from the world below. A faint bird call appears somewhere beyond the town. It is not repeated. It is not part of a pattern yet. It is only a single sound, small and unsteady, as if testing the morning air before deciding whether to continue. No one in the town reacts. The houses remain still. The streets remain empty. But something in the atmosphere has shifted in a way that is felt rather than seen. The lantern that had survived the night finally dims completely. Its light fades into nothing, leaving the street it guarded fully in the early softness of morning. Yet the street does not feel dark anymore. It feels simply quiet in a different way. Inside the homes, sleep begins to loosen. Not breaking. Not ending abruptly. Just becoming lighter, more fragile at its edges, like fabric gently lifted by a slow breeze. A hand rests on a blanket and moves slightly. A face turns toward the faint light that is beginning to gather near a window. Still no full waking. Only awareness nearing the surface. Outside, the sky continues its slow transformation. The deep black of night has now softened into a dark blue-gray. It is still early, still quiet, but no longer entirely night. The horizon holds the first gentle hint of warmth. Not yet golden. Not yet bright. Only a very soft, pale suggestion that light is on its way. The fields beyond the town begin to show faint shapes again. Trees slowly regain their outlines. Fences become faintly visible. The land is no longer swallowed by darkness, but gently revealed again, piece by piece. Inside one home, a person opens their eyes briefly. No movement follows at first. Just stillness. Then a slow awareness returns, not rushed, not startled, simply arriving as naturally as the night had once arrived. The room is no longer fully dark. A thin line of early light touches the edge of a wall. Outside, more birds begin to stir. Not many yet. Just a few scattered sounds, gentle and uncoordinated, like small points of life waking at their own pace. The town itself remains silent. But it is a different silence now. Not the silence of deep night. But the silence of early morning, where everything is about to begin again, but has not yet started. In another home, a window is opened slightly. Cool morning air enters quietly. It carries the faintest scent of earth, damp grass, and distant trees waking under a changing sky. The world outside is no longer hidden. It is simply emerging slowly, without urgency. Inside the houses, more people begin to wake. Not all at once. Not quickly. One by one, gently, as if the town is remembering itself again. The night has fully softened now. And morning, still quiet and unhurried, has taken its place without breaking anything, without disturbing anything, only continuing the endless calm rhythm of life in the colonial town. Morning does not arrive with sharpness here. It unfolds. Slowly, like a curtain being drawn back by invisible hands, revealing the same world that was always there, only now touched by light again. The sky has grown lighter. Not bright yet, not fully awake in color, but no longer heavy with night. The deep blue has softened into pale gray blue, and along the horizon, a quiet warmth begins to spread in a thin, gentle line. The colonial town responds in its own time. There is no rush. No sudden movement. Only gradual return. Inside the homes, more eyes open now. Not all at once. Not in rhythm. Just scattered moments of waking, one room, then another like small lamps being lit one by one inside a quiet village. A person sits up slowly in bed. The blanket slips slightly from their shoulder. They do not move quickly. There is no urgency in their body. The night still lingers in their thoughts, soft and fading, like something half remembered. Outside, the first real sounds of morning begin. A bird calls again. Then another answers somewhere farther away. The sounds are not loud. They are delicate, tentative, as if the world is gently testing its voice after hours of silence. The rooftops of the town begin to show their shapes clearly again. Wooden beams, clay tiles, chimney lines, all returning from shadow into definition. The town is the same town as before, but now it is visible again, slowly reintroduced to the eye. A door opens softly. Not wide. Just enough for morning air to enter. It carries coolness, freshness, and the faint scent of damp earth from fields that rested through the night. Inside one kitchen, a small fire is prepared again. Not large. Not urgent. Just enough to begin the day. A few sticks are placed carefully. A spark is struck. And slowly, a small flame begins to form, hesitant at first, then steadier as it finds air. The light of morning grows stronger outside. Still gentle, still soft, but now unmistakably present. It spreads across the fields first, touching grass with pale gold, revealing dew resting quietly on blades and leaves. Each drop catches light for a moment before it fades again. The town's streets begin to regain their texture. Dust, stone, worn paths all becoming visible again under the rising sky. A person steps outside. Slowly. Carefully. They pause for a moment, simply standing in the morning air. The world feels new, but also familiar, like it has always been here and only just returned from silence. Farther down the street, another door opens. Then another. Then another. Not a crowd. Not a rush. Just the slow reappearance of life. People begin small routines again without speaking much. A bucket is lifted. A window is opened wider. A chair is placed outside for air. Everything happens gently, as if the town is still careful not to disturb the peace it has just left behind. Above, the sky continues to brighten. Now faint hints of warmth appear, soft gold mixing with pale blue near the horizon. The sun is not visible yet, but its presence is undeniable. It is arriving. Slowly. Calmly. In one house, a person stands by a window. They do not speak. They simply look out. At rooftops. At trees. At the quiet movement of morning returning to the world. The night is gone now, but it is not forgotten. It lingers in the softness of movement, in the calmness of waking, in the way nothing feels rushed. Even the air seems to carry both night and morning together for a moment, as if they are gently exchanging places without resistance. The first full light begins to touch the town. Not harsh. Not bright in a sudden way. Just steady, warm, and patient. The colonial town is awake now. But it is not loud. It is not hurried. It is simply alive again, in the same peaceful rhythm that carried it through the night, continuing forward quietly into the new day. The light grows slowly stronger now, but it never becomes harsh. It spreads across the town in soft layers, as if the morning is carefully placing brightness where darkness once rested. Rooftops warm first. Then walls. Then the narrow paths between homes where footsteps will soon begin again. Everything feels gently renewed. Not changed. Renewed. Inside the homes, daily life begins to return in the smallest possible ways. A kettle is placed on a hearth. Water is poured. A wooden spoon is picked up. These are not hurried actions. They are familiar actions, done so many times before that they require no thought. The hands remember what to do even before the mind fully wakes. Outside, the town begins to breathe more openly. Doors remain open longer now. Windows stay unshuttered. The air moves freely through rooms that were closed through the night, carrying with it the coolness of dawn and the quiet promise of a new day. A faint mist rests over parts of the fields beyond the town. It is thin, almost invisible in places, but still present like a memory of night that has not fully dissolved yet. As the light grows stronger, the mist begins to lift slowly, rising in soft layers toward the sky. Birds are more active now. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just steady, scattered life returning across branches, rooftops, and distant trees. Their sounds fill the air in a gentle pattern that does not overwhelm the quiet, it simply becomes part of it. In one small home, bread is placed near a window, letting it cool in the morning air. The surface catches soft light, showing texture and warmth from the oven. The smell spreads gently through the room, simple and familiar, blending with the scent of wood and early daylight. A person steps outside and pauses again. The ground beneath their feet is slightly cool. Dew has not fully disappeared yet. It clings quietly to grass near the edges of paths, shining briefly when touched by sunlight before fading into the earth. The town is no longer silent. But it is not loud either. It exists in a balanced space between rest and activity. A space where sound is present but not overwhelming. Where movement is steady but not rushed. A cart will roll slowly along a path. Not fast. Not heavy. Just steady movement marking the beginning of work for the day. The sound blends into the morning without disturbing it. Above, the sky continues to brighten. Now soft gold expands more clearly along the horizon, gently pushing away the last traces of night. The blue becomes clearer, lighter, more open. Inside a home, a chair is pulled slightly into the sunlight. A person sits near it, not speaking, simply resting for a moment in the warmth that is now reaching indoors. The light touches their hands. Their face. The edge of the table. Everything it reaches becomes softer, calmer, more defined. Farther down the street, neighbors begin to acknowledge each other. A small nod. A quiet greeting. Nothing elaborate. Just the simple recognition that another day has begun together in the same place, under the same sky. The town feels fully awake now, but still peaceful. There is no rush in it. No urgency. Only the steady rhythm of life returning to its shape. The mist in the fields continues to rise until it is nearly gone. The land becomes fully visible again, wide, open, and calm under the growing morning light. And above it all, the sun finally begins to reveal itself at the edge of the world. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But gently, as if it has been there all along and is only now allowing itself to be seen. Its light spreads across the colonial town in soft waves, touching rooftops, windows, and streets with a calm warmth that feels steady and kind. The night is fully gone now. But it leaves nothing behind that disturbs the morning. Only stillness. Only calmness. Only the quiet memory of how peaceful everything can be when the world rests. And so the town continues into its day, slow, steady, and quietly alive beneath the rising sun. The sun does not rush its arrival. It rises in a slow, steady way, as if it understands the town is still adjusting to being awake again. Light spreads more fully now, touching everything without urgency, filling the spaces that were only recently held by night. The colonial town feels completely changed, and yet entirely the same. The streets are now fully visible. Wooden fences, worn paths, stone steps, and door frames all return in clear detail. The world no longer hides in shadow. It stands openly beneath the morning sky, calm and familiar. Inside the homes, life has settled into the early rhythm of day. Water is heated. Simple meals are prepared. Doors are opened and closed at an easy pace. Nothing feels rushed. Even movement seems to carry the softness of morning still lingering in the air. A person steps outside and pauses again, this time under full sunlight. The warmth is gentle, not overwhelming. It rests on shoulders, on hands, on faces turned slightly upward without effort. There is a quiet comfort in it, like something long familiar returning after a short absence. The town's sounds are now steady. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just present. A hammer tapping wood in the distance. Footsteps along a road. The soft pull of a rope. The movement of daily work beginning again in simple, ordinary ways. These sounds do not disturb the peace. They are part of it. Above, the sky is now fully open. Pale blue stretches wide without interruption. The stars are no longer visible, but their memory lingers faintly in the brightness that replaced them. A light breeze moves through the town. It passes between houses, over rooftops, across fields just beyond the edge of settlement. It carries warmth now, instead of cold. It feels like the world has exhaled after the long night and is breathing calmly into its new day. In one home, a table is set near a window. Sunlight falls across its surface in clean, soft shapes. A cup of water sits still. Bread rests nearby. Nothing extravagant. Everything simple. Everything enough. A person sits quietly for a moment before beginning their day. They do not speak. They do not hurry. They simply remain there, feeling the light and the quiet stability of morning. Outside, more people are visible now along the streets. Some walk slowly. Some stand briefly in doorways. Some tend to small tasks that have been done countless times before in countless mornings like this one. The town moves together, but gently, never forcing itself into speed. Beyond the town, the fields are fully awake under the sun. Grass sways lightly in the breeze. Trees cast soft, steady shadows. The land is open and calm, stretching outward in peaceful layers beneath the sky. A cart passes along a road at an easy pace. Its wheels turn slowly, evenly, without strain. The sound it makes blends into everything else without breaking the quiet balance of the morning. Inside another house, a window is cleaned slowly. A cloth moves across the glass, revealing a clearer view of the world outside. The act is simple, repetitive, almost meditative in its rhythm. Light enters more fully afterward, filling the room with a warm clarity. The colonial town now feels fully alive again. But not in a hurried way. In a settled way. In a way that carries both rest and movement together, without conflict. Morning is now complete. The night has fully faded into memory. But it has not disappeared from feeling. It remains in the softness of the day, in the calmness of movement, in the quiet ease with which everything begins again. The sun continues its slow climb. The town continues its gentle rhythm. And life moves forward not loudly, not quickly, but steadily beneath the wide, peaceful morning sky. The morning has now fully settled into itself. The light is steady, no longer changing quickly, no longer uncertain at the edges. It rests evenly across the town, as if it has chosen to stay for a while and simply be present. The colonial town moves within it calmly. Not as one large motion, but as many small, quiet motions happening side by side. Inside the homes, the early tasks of the day continue. Water is carried in small buckets from wells. Cloth is folded and placed neatly on wooden surfaces. Simple tools are lifted, used, and set down again without hurry. Each action feels familiar, repeated across countless mornings before this one, carried forward without need for thought. The sound of daily life is now fully present. Still gentle. Still balanced. It is not a noise that overwhelms the air. It is a noise that belongs to it. A steady, natural rhythm. Outside, the streets are now softly active. People move along them at an unhurried pace. Some carry baskets. Some walk alone. Some pause briefly in front of doorways before continuing on. There is no rush between them. Only quiet coordination, as if everyone understands that the day will unfold at its own speed. The breeze continues through the town. It is warmer now than earlier in the morning. It carries the scent of earth, wood, and distant fields, mixing gently with the everyday smells of cooking and movement. In one small corner of the town, a garden is tended carefully. Hands move through soil. Plants are adjusted gently. Leaves are checked, not with urgency, but with quiet attention. Everything is done slowly, as if the act itself is more important than the result. Above, the sky is now fully clear. A wide, uninterrupted blue stretches across the entire view. No trace of night remains, except in memory. The sun is higher now, but still soft in its presence. It does not press down harshly. It simply warms everything it touches in steady light. Inside a home, a wooden chair is moved slightly into a brighter spot near a window. A person sits there for a while without doing anything else. Just sitting. Just resting in the warmth of the morning that has become day. Their presence is still. The room around them is still. Even time feels less noticeable in moments like this. Outside, the town continues its slow activity. A cart passes again, slightly farther down the road. Voices appear briefly between neighbors, short, simple exchanges, then silence again. Everything remains balanced between motion and quiet. Beyond the town, the fields are now fully alive under sunlight. Grass moves gently in soft waves. Shadows from trees lie calmly on the ground, shifting only slightly as the day continues. There is no tension in the landscape. Only openness. Only calm continuation. In another home, a meal is prepared. Not elaborate. Not rushed. Just steady preparation of familiar food. The sound of cutting wood, the movement of hands, the placement of simple ingredients all blending into the steady rhythm of the day. The colonial town does not feel divided between night and day anymore. It feels continuous. As if the night and morning were never separate, but part of the same long, gentle cycle. Even now, in full daylight, there is a softness in everything. In movement. In sound. In stillness between actions. The day continues forward, but never sharply. It flows. Quietly. Steadily. And the town remains within it, calm and grounded beneath the wide, peaceful sky, where light now holds everything in a warm and steady embrace. By now, the sun has climbed higher. Not in a sudden way, but in the same slow patience that has guided the entire day. Its light is no longer just gentle, it is fuller now, spreading evenly across rooftops, streets, and open fields beyond the town. Still, nothing feels rushed. The colonial town continues at its own steady pace, as if it has learned over many years that there is no need to hurry through time. The streets are more active now than in the morning, yet still calm. Footsteps come and go. Doors open and close. Soft voices rise briefly and then fade again into the air. Everything feels connected, but not crowded. In one part of town, a small market space begins to show life. Simple goods are arranged on wooden tables. Hands place items carefully, adjusting them slightly, not for perfection, but for ease. People move between them slowly, pausing when something draws attention, then continuing without pressure. There is no urgency in exchange. Only quiet understanding. Beyond this space, the road leads toward the fields again. The light there is stronger now. The grass is brighter under the afternoon sun, and the gentle movement of wind creates a soft pattern across the land, like waves that never fully break. Inside a home, the interior has grown warmer. Sunlight now reaches deeper into rooms, stretching across floors and walls, shifting slowly as the day continues. A person sits near a table, hands resting without movement for a moment. Not tired. Just still. The kind of stillness that exists naturally in the middle of the day, when the morning has passed but the evening has not yet begun. A wooden cup is lifted, water taken slowly, then placed back down. The sound is small, but clear in the quiet balance of the room. Outside, a few animals move along the edges of the town. Not in hurry. Not scattered. Just present in their own rhythms, passing through spaces between fences and trees where human activity is lighter. The town feels layered now. At its center, steady human life continues. At its edges, nature moves alongside it in quiet agreement. Above, the sky remains open and unchanged. Blue deepens slightly by the height of the sun, but still soft in tone, still calm in presence. No clouds interrupt it in any strong way. Only faint, distant shapes appear and dissolve slowly, like thoughts passing across a wide mind. Inside another home, a cloth is folded carefully and placed into a drawer. The action is simple, repeated, almost meditative. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forgotten. Every movement feels complete in itself. In the distance, a bell sound briefly marks time. It is not loud. It does not echo strongly. It simply exists for a moment, then fades, becoming part of the larger quiet of the town again. People do not stop for it. They acknowledge it only in the subtle way of continuing their tasks with awareness of the passing hours. The afternoon light grows slightly warmer now. It touches the town differently than morning light did. Where morning felt like beginning, afternoon feels like continuation. A steady middle space where everything is already in motion, and nothing needs to be started again. In a shaded area near a home, a person sits outside. The shade is soft beneath trees or roof edges, offering a calm contrast to the brighter open spaces nearby. Here, time feels slower. The sound of distant activity becomes faint, almost like background breathing of the town itself. The person does not speak. They simply rest, watching the quiet movement of light and shadow. Farther away, a narrow path winds between buildings. It is lightly traveled now, but not empty. Occasional movement passes through it, brief, unhurried, almost unnoticeable unless one is paying attention. Everything in the town feels like this now. Present, but gentle. Active, but not overwhelming. The colonial town in afternoon is not a place of sharp change. It is a place of continuation, where every moment flows into the next without resistance. Where light, sound, and movement exist together in calm balance. And so the day continues onward, steady and quiet, under the wide sky that holds everything gently in its warm afternoon embrace. The afternoon does not end suddenly. It begins to soften first. Almost without notice, the light changes its character. It is still bright, still present across the town, but it loses a certain sharpness. Shadows grow a little longer. Edges of buildings become slightly warmer in tone, less direct, more relaxed. The colonial town continues its steady rhythm. But something in the air begins to suggest transition. Not urgency. Just change, arriving quietly. Inside the homes, the pace of activity begins to ease. The busiest parts of the day are already behind. What remains now are smaller tasks, slower movements, simple finishing touches to the flow of the day. A cloth is shaken out and folded again. A pot is set aside after use. A chair is pushed gently back into place. Each action feels like a closing of small chapters within the larger story of the day. Outside, the streets are still active, but less densely so. People begin to return from distant paths. Some walk more slowly than before. Some pause briefly in familiar places, as if acknowledging the shift in time without needing to speak about it. There is no clear moment when afternoon becomes evening. It happens in layers. Light changing first. Then sound. Then movement. Above, the sky remains open, but its tone is beginning to soften. The blue is still there, but it is less intense now. It carries a warmer undertone, especially toward the horizon, where faint golden hints begin to appear. In one home, a window is opened slightly wider than before. The air that enters feels different. Still warm, but no longer rising in strength. It carries the sense of a day that is beginning to settle, as if even the wind is becoming slower in its movement. A person stands by that window for a long moment. Not doing anything. Just observing the quiet shift outside. The town is still fully awake. But it is no longer expanding its activity. It is beginning to gather it back in. Farther along the streets, small groups of movement become less frequent. Paths that were moderately busy earlier now feel more open again. The sound of footsteps becomes more spaced out, more distinct in their separations. Inside a small workshop, tools are placed down carefully. Not abruptly. Not with finality. Just with the awareness that the working part of the day is nearing its close. Wooden surfaces are brushed clean. Objects are aligned in familiar order. Everything returns to rest in its place. Outside, the fields beyond the town reflect the changing light. Grass that was bright green under midday sun now carries a warmer, softer tone. Shadows stretch longer across open ground, slowly reaching toward each other as the sun lowers. A gentle breeze moves through again. It is cooler now than before. Not cold. Just gently shifting toward evening's temperature, as if the air itself is preparing for another change. Inside a home, a meal begins to be prepared earlier than it would have been in midday. The rhythm of the day adjusts without instruction. It simply follows the light. Fire is tended again, but with less intensity than morning preparation. The flame is steady, controlled, calm. The sound of preparation blends with the quieting town outside. In the distance, fewer voices are heard now. Not silence, but reduction. A gradual thinning of sound as people begin to return inward, toward homes, toward rest, toward the approaching evening. Above, the sky's colors begin their first real shift. Blue remains, but now it is touched with faint amber near the horizon. A soft gradient forming, almost imperceptible unless one lingers to notice it. The sun is still above the world, but its position is lower than before. Its presence is no longer about height. It is about warmth spreading differently across everything it touches. Inside the town, windows begin to glow again, in some places not from lamps yet, but from the way sunlight now enters at a lower angle. It rests on walls, floors, and tables in longer shapes, softer tones. Time feels stretched again. Not fast. Not slow. Just elongated in the way it always becomes near evening. The colonial town does not stop. It does not rush. It simply turns gently, like a familiar page being moved forward in a long, quiet book. And in this turning, everything remains peaceful. Everything remains steady. Everything continues under the soft approach of evening light, as the day begins to lower itself slowly toward night once more. Evening does not enter the town with force. It returns. Softly. As if it had always been nearby, waiting just beyond the edge of daylight, ready to step back in when the world grows tired enough to welcome it. The light shifts again. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily enough that the change can be felt in the way shadows lengthen across the streets and settle more deeply against the walls of homes. The colonial town begins to slow in response. Not because anything demands it, but because everything naturally follows the rhythm of the light. Inside the houses, lamps begin to appear again. Not all at once. One by one. A flame is struck. A wick is adjusted. A small pool of light begins to form inside a room that was only moments ago filled with the last warmth of the sun. The glow is soft. Familiar. Comforting. Outside, footsteps become fewer. People who were still out begin to turn back toward home without urgency. The movement through the streets is gentle, unhurried, almost reflective, as if the day is being carried back inward in quiet pieces. A wooden door closes slowly. Not as an ending, but as a pause. A transition from outward movement to inward stillness. The sky continues its transformation above. The warm tones near the horizon deepen slightly, now soft amber blending into muted gold, then slowly into cooler blue above. It is a gradual layering, like colors settling into place without resistance. In one home, a kettle is placed near a low flame again. Water begins to warm. The sound is subtle, almost imperceptible, blending into the quiet of the room. Everything in the space feels contained, calm, and steady. A person sits near the fire without speaking. They do not rush the moment. They do not try to fill it. They simply remain present as the evening gathers around them. Outside, the fields grow quieter again. The wind is softer now, moving low across the ground rather than through the air above. Grass bends slightly, then returns, then rests again. The light over the fields turns more golden, then gradually more muted as it spreads across distance. Shadows stretch long and thin. They begin to connect spaces that were separate during the day. Trees, fences, paths all drawn together in the soft geometry of evening light. The town itself now feels closer together. Not physically, but in feeling. Homes seem more connected. Streets feel more unified. Even distance seems reduced, as if the approaching night is gently drawing everything inward. Inside a small room, a window is partially closed. Not fully. Just enough to shape the air inside more gently. The lamp's glow reflects softly against the glass, creating faint layers of light that overlap with the fading daylight outside. The world inside and outside briefly share the same tone. A quiet overlap of evening and life. Farther down the street, another lamp is lit. Then another. The town begins to glow again, not brightly, but steadily, as if it is remembering its night form even before the sun has fully left. There is no separation between day and night here. Only transition. Only gradual change. A man walks slowly along a familiar path. His pace is even, measured, unhurried. He does not look around with urgency. He simply moves through the familiar shapes of his surroundings as they shift into evening. The air grows cooler now. Not cold. Just softer, calmer, and slightly more still. Above, the sun continues its descent. Its light no longer reaches straight across the town but comes at an angle now, stretching longer across rooftops and fading gently as it travels. The color of the sky deepens further. Warm tones near the horizon become richer, while the upper sky shifts into a quieter blue. Inside homes, more lamps are lit. The glow becomes more noticeable now, not individually, but collectively, small points of light beginning to define the town again as daylight slowly withdraws. The colonial town does not resist this change. It welcomes it without ceremony. As it has always done. Evening continues its gentle arrival, settling over rooftops, streets, and fields, until everything once again begins to belong to the softer world of night. There is a moment in the evening when neither day nor night feels fully present. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. A thin, calm space where the world seems to pause between two states of being. The colonial town rests in that space now. The sun is no longer high enough to hold the day firmly in place, but night has not yet arrived to take its full shape. Instead, everything exists in a softened in-between. Light lingers in warm traces across rooftops. Shadows deepen gently without becoming complete darkness. And the air itself feels suspended, as if it is holding its breath. Inside the homes, lamps are now steady. Their glow is no longer new. It has settled into familiarity, becoming part of the room's atmosphere rather than something that stands out. The light falls softly on wooden tables, woven fabrics, and quiet walls that have seen many evenings like this before. A person moves slowly through a room. Not with purpose that demands urgency, but with the ease of someone finishing the final small tasks of the day. A cup is placed down. A cloth is folded once more. A door is checked and left slightly ajar. Outside, the town is quieter again. Not empty. Just softened. Movement still exists in the streets, but it is reduced now to occasional passing figures and slow returns toward home. The sound of evening activity is gentle, spaced out, almost thoughtful in its rhythm. Above, the sky has shifted further. The warm colors near the horizon have deepened into amber and soft copper tones. Higher up, the blue has grown cooler, darker, preparing slowly for the return of night. The sun itself is no longer visible, though its presence is still felt in the lingering glow it leaves behind. In one small yard, a chair sits beneath fading light. It is empty now. But it holds the memory of the day that passed through it, the hours of sitting, resting, watching, thinking quietly without words. The wind moves through the town again, slightly cooler than before. It does not rush. It does not linger. It passes through like a gentle reminder that change is always moving forward, even when nothing seems to be happening. Inside a home, a lamp is adjusted carefully. The flame is steady. It does not flicker much. It simply glows, casting soft light that reaches just far enough into the room to make everything visible without harshness. A meal is finished slowly. Not rushed. Not left incomplete. Just completed in its own quiet timing. The sounds of utensils, the movement of hands, the final placement of objects all blend into a peaceful rhythm that belongs only to this hour of the day. Outside, the town's outline becomes more defined by light than by detail. Windows glow like small warm points. Doors appear as darker shapes within illuminated frames. Streets stretch gently between them, no longer fully bright, no longer fully dark. A balance forms. Not of day or night, but of both existing briefly together. Far beyond the town, the fields are now subdued under the evening sky. The colors there are muted, softened by distance and fading light. Grass no longer shines under the sun but rests quietly under the early presence of night. A few final birds cross the sky. Their movement is calm, unhurried, as if returning to places unseen beyond the horizon. Inside the homes, more people settle into stillness. Some sit near lamps. Some lean back in chairs. Some simply remain quiet, allowing the evening to complete its slow transformation around them. The town does not hurry this moment. It does not resist it. It simply allows it to unfold. And as it does, the in-between space gradually begins to thin. Night approaches again, not suddenly, but steadily, like a familiar presence returning once more to take its place over the sleeping world. The colonial town remains calm, held gently between light and darkness, waiting, without tension, for the next quiet arrival of night. Night does not arrive as a break from evening. It arrives as its completion. As if everything that came before was only preparing the world for this final, gentle settling. The last traces of daylight fade from the horizon. Not all at once, but slowly enough that the change feels natural, almost unnoticeable unless one is watching closely. Warm colors dissolve into cooler tones. Copper becomes gray-blue. Gray-blue becomes deepening indigo. And then, gradually, the sky becomes what it has been before, wide, dark, and calm. The colonial town responds without resistance. It has done this before. Many times. Inside the homes, the lamps now define everything. Their light no longer competes with the sun. It becomes the only visible warmth in each room, shaping small, intimate spaces of glow within the larger quiet of night. Wooden walls soften in the lamplight. Objects lose their sharpness and become familiar silhouettes again. Everything feels closer. Everything feels smaller. And everything feels safe in its stillness. Outside, the streets grow quiet once more. Movement becomes rare now. Only the occasional figure passes through, footsteps slow and measured, disappearing into doorways that close gently behind them. The sound of the town begins to fade into itself again. Not into silence, but into stillness. Above, the first stars return. Not suddenly. One by one. Faint at first, then steady, then gradually more numerous as the sky deepens into full night again. The moon rises again in its quiet place. Not different from before. Not changed. Only continuing its slow, familiar journey across the sky, casting pale, gentle light across rooftops and open ground. In one home, a window reflects both lamplight and night sky at once. Inside and outside briefly share the same frame. Warm interior glow against cool, distant darkness. A peaceful contrast that does not divide the world, but holds it together. A person sits quietly near a table. They do not speak. They do not move much. Their presence is calm, settled, as if the day has fully left them and only rest remains. The sound of the house is minimal now. A faint creak of wood. The soft flicker of a flame. A distant sound outside that does not repeat. Everything else has already quieted. Outside, the fields are now fully under night again. The grass is no longer visible in detail, but exists as a soft texture beneath the moonlight. Trees become darker forms against the sky, no longer defined by color, only shape. The wind moves gently across them. Not cold. Not strong. Just present enough to remind the land that it is alive even in stillness. Inside another home, a lamp is lowered slightly. The flame remains steady, but softer now. The room becomes more intimate, more enclosed in its light. Shadows deepen in corners again, not threatening, only natural, like familiar companions of the night. A person leans back slowly in their chair. They remain still. Breathing steady. Thoughts quiet. The kind of quiet that does not demand attention, only acceptance. Outside, the town has fully returned to its night form. Windows glow across scattered distances like small islands of warmth in a larger sea of darkness. Each one a separate world. Each one calm. Each one resting in its own gentle stillness. The sky above is now fully filled with stars again. Not changing. Not moving. Simply present, as they have always been. The colonial town has come full circle once more. From night to morning, from morning to day, from day to evening, and now back again into night. But nothing feels repeated. Only continuous. Only flowing. And so the town rests again beneath the wide, quiet sky. Not ending. Not beginning. Only continuing in its soft, peaceful rhythm, held gently in the return of night. The night settles more easily this time. Not because it is stronger, but because the town has already remembered it. There is no hesitation left in the transition. Evening has fully released its hold, and now night simply exists steady, complete, and familiar, like an old presence returning to a place it has always belonged. The streets are quiet again. Not empty in a harsh sense. Just quiet in the way that feels natural for this hour. A calm absence of movement, where even stillness seems to have its own shape. Inside the homes, the lamps continue to glow. Their light is now the center of every room. It does not try to brighten everything. It only reaches where it is needed: tables, hands, faces, the soft edges of walls. Beyond that, shadows rest comfortably, no longer pushed away, only accepted as part of the room. A wooden chair shifts slightly in one house. Then becomes still again. A soft sound of fabric is heard as someone adjusts their position. These are small, ordinary sounds. They do not disturb the night. They belong to it. Outside, the sky is fully dark now. The stars are steady again, spread across the wide sky in quiet abundance. The moon sits higher than before, its pale light resting gently over rooftops, fields, and the empty spaces between buildings. Nothing about it feels new. Everything feels remembered. In one home, a candle is slowly replaced by a steadier lamp. The flame is adjusted carefully, shaped into a calm, consistent glow. The action is unhurried. Deliberate in a quiet way, as if even small adjustments deserve patience in this hour. A person sits near the light without speaking. They are not doing anything in particular. Just being present. Resting in the soft boundary between thought and sleep. Outside, a narrow path glows faintly under moonlight. It is not bright, but visible enough to guide anyone who might walk it. No one does now. But it remains there, unchanged, patient, familiar. The wind moves again through the town. It is quieter than before. It passes through trees and over rooftops without disturbing anything. It feels like part of the night's breathing. In another home, a window is left slightly open. The air that enters is cool, but not uncomfortable. It carries the scent of earth that has rested through the day and is now fully still again. Inside, the room remains warm. Not from heat alone, but from the steady presence of light and life within it. A blanket is adjusted slowly. Then stillness returns. The town, as a whole, feels deeply settled now. Not active. Not fading. Just resting in a stable state of quiet existence. Every home holds its own small world of light. Every street holds its own quiet stretch of darkness. Every sound is soft enough to belong to the air itself. Above, the sky remains unchanged. The stars do not shift. The moon continues its slow passage. Time feels less like movement and more like presence. Inside one house, a final ember in a hearth glows faintly. Not enough to light the room. Only enough to remind it that fire was once there. It fades slowly, without urgency, until only darkness remains in that corner as well. But the room is not empty. The lamp continues to provide gentle light. The night continues to be calm. And the town continues to rest. Far beyond the edges of settlement, the land is still. Fields, trees, and distant hills lie under the same quiet sky, sharing the same stillness, the same softness, the same unbroken peace. Nothing changes quickly here. Everything moves at the pace of night itself. And so the colonial town remains. Held in gentle darkness. Surrounded by steady stars. Resting once again in the familiar quiet of night, where everything slows, softens, and simply continues to be. The night settles even further now, though it does not become heavier. Instead, it becomes more complete. As if every sound that could have remained has already finished speaking, and the world has agreed to rest without interruption. The colonial town lies quiet beneath the wide sky. Not changed. Only deepened. Inside the homes, the lamps burn a little lower now. Their light is still steady, but softer at the edges, stretching gently across wooden surfaces and fading into corners where darkness is allowed to remain undisturbed. The rooms feel smaller at this hour. Not physically, but in feeling. As if night brings everything closer together in quiet balance. A person stands briefly in one room, then sits again. No urgency in the movement. Only the natural rhythm of settling deeper into rest. Outside, the streets are still. Completely still in appearance, though not empty of presence. They hold the memory of movement earlier in the day, now softened into silence. A faint sound of wood adjusting in a distant building is heard, then disappears again. The night accepts even this small sound without disturbance. Above, the stars remain unchanged. They are no brighter, no fewer. Just constant. A steady, silent pattern across the sky that offers no instruction, only presence. The moon continues its slow path, casting pale light over rooftops and empty roads. Its light is not sharp. It does not define edges strongly. It softens them, allowing everything it touches to feel slightly distant, slightly calm, slightly removed from urgency. In one home, a chair is pushed back gently from a table. The sound is soft enough that it blends quickly into the room's stillness. A cloth is folded once more, then placed down carefully. Nothing remains unfinished in a hurried sense. Everything is simply completed in its own time. The room becomes still again. Outside, the fields beyond the town are fully quiet. Grass lies unmoving under the night sky. Trees stand without motion. The land feels wide and open, but deeply at rest, as if it too is sleeping under the same gentle weight of night. A faint breeze passes through. It is slower now than before. Almost imperceptible. It moves through branches and open spaces like a thought passing through a quiet mind. Inside another home, a lamp flickers slightly. Then steadies again. The light remains soft and warm, shaping the room in familiar tones. A person leans slightly forward, then back again in their seat. Their posture relaxes further. Still no speech. Only presence. Only rest. The colonial town now feels suspended in its deepest nighttime state. Not silent in absence, but silent in fullness. Every home holds its own small glow. Every street holds its own stretch of darkness. Every distance between places feels gently connected by the shared stillness of the hour. Even time itself feels less noticeable now. Not stopped. Just softened. Inside one house, a window reflects the faint moonlight and the warm interior glow together. The two lights do not compete. They exist side by side. Like night and life sharing the same quiet space without conflict. A final ember somewhere in the town fades completely. No sound follows. Only the natural completion of its warmth. But nothing feels lost. Because the lamp still burns. Because the night is steady. Because everything continues in calm balance. Outside, the world remains unchanged. Yet deeply present. The sky is wide. The stars are constant. The moon is patient. And the town rests beneath it all, fully embraced by night, continuing its quiet existence without interruption or end. Just stillness. Just night. Just the soft, enduring peace of a colonial town sleeping under the open sky. The night has reached a point where it no longer feels like it is moving forward. It feels like it is simply being. Not arriving. Not changing. Just holding the world gently in place. The colonial town rests fully inside that stillness now. Every sound has thinned into the background of the night, becoming so soft that it feels more like memory than presence. Inside the homes, the lamps continue their slow, steady glow. Their light is smaller now, but not weaker in feeling. It is more intimate, more close, as if it belongs only to the space immediately around it and nothing beyond. Wooden walls reflect that light softly. Surfaces that were bright in daytime are now calm and muted. Everything feels gently reduced to what is necessary. Nothing more. Nothing less. A person shifts slightly in a chair near the lamp. Then becomes still again. No words are spoken. No additional movement follows. The silence accepts it easily. Outside, the streets remain undisturbed. Not even the suggestion of movement passes through them now. They exist as quiet paths between sleeping homes, known but unused, familiar but resting. The moonlight lays itself across them evenly. Not illuminating. Not revealing. Just resting there, like a soft covering that asks for nothing in return. Far beyond the town, the fields are completely still. Grass and earth lie under the same sky without distinction. The land does not feel empty. It feels paused. Held in a long, quiet breath that has not yet been released. A distant owl calls once. Only once. The sound travels briefly through the night, then fades into the open space beyond hearing. No echo remains. The night does not respond. It simply continues. Inside one home, a window is gently closed. Not tightly. Not with effort. Just enough to keep the cool air steady within the room. The sound of the latch is soft. Final. Then stillness returns again without interruption. A blanket is pulled slightly higher. A slow adjustment. A familiar motion of comfort. The body settles deeper into rest. The room remains unchanged. The lamp remains steady. Outside, the town continues in its quiet balance. Every house a small enclosed world. Every light a soft point in the larger dark. Every space between them filled with calm air and unbroken stillness. Time no longer feels measured here. It feels spread evenly, like a gentle surface that nothing disturbs. Above, the stars remain fixed in their positions. They do not feel distant in a cold way. They feel distant in a calm way. As if they are simply watching without expectation. The moon continues its slow passage, unchanged in expression, unchanged in presence. In one corner of the town, a final lantern remains faintly visible. It does not flicker much. It does not struggle. It simply persists, as if it has become part of the night itself rather than something separate from it. Inside a home, a person's breathing becomes deeper and slower. Not noticeable in action. Only in presence. The room remains quiet. The lamp remains low. The night remains steady. And the town remains fully within it. Nothing is incomplete. Nothing is waiting. Everything is simply held in place by the calm weight of night, like a gentle hand resting over a sleeping world. And so the colonial town continues in its deep, unbroken stillness, where even silence feels complete, and even darkness feels peaceful, as the night holds everything softly until time is ready to move again. There is a part of the night that feels almost timeless. Not because time has stopped, but because it moves so quietly that it becomes difficult to notice at all. This is where the colonial town rests now. In the long, gentle hour before any promise of morning begins to return. The sky above is still fully dark. Not changing. Not rushing. Just holding its wide, steady form over the sleeping land. The stars remain in their familiar places, unchanged from earlier hours, as if they too have settled into a patient stillness. The moon continues its slow passage, casting a pale, even light that does not disturb anything below. It simply exists, quietly observing a world at rest. Inside the homes, the lamps have grown lower still. Their glow is small now, but unwavering. It is the kind of light that no longer defines a room, but gently accompanies it. It does not push back the darkness. It lives alongside it. A person in one house shifts slightly beneath a blanket. A small movement. Then stillness returns. No awareness breaks the quiet. Only rest continues. Outside, the town is unchanged in appearance. But something subtle exists in the feeling of it now. A deeper stillness. A quieter weight. Not heavy. Just complete. The streets remain empty. Not recently emptied, but continuously so, as if nothing has moved through them for a long time. The silence here is not new. It has been unfolding slowly for hours. Beyond the town, the fields are fully at rest. No motion in grass. No movement in branches. Even the air feels less active, as if it has softened into a near-perfect calm. A faint sound appears somewhere far away. So distant it almost does not belong to the town at all. It arrives once, then does not repeat. The night does not react. It continues as it was before. Inside one home, a lamp flickers slightly. A brief, natural fluctuation. Then it steadies again, returning to its soft glow. The room does not change with it. Everything remains as it was. Calm. Still. Contained in quiet warmth. A chair stands near a table, untouched now for some time. A cup rests beside it, no longer warm, no longer active, simply present in its place. The ordinary objects of the home feel settled into the night, as if they too have chosen rest. Outside, the sky remains unchanged. Yet there is a faint sense not visible, not measurable that the darkness is beginning to soften at its edges. Not yet morning. Not yet light. Only a subtle easing, like the world slowly preparing itself without urgency. In one room, a sleeping person breathes deeply. Slowly. Evenly. The rhythm does not change. The room does not respond. It simply holds them in quiet stillness. Across the town, every house shares the same condition. Each one a small enclosed space of rest. Each one separate, yet part of the same larger calm. The night continues without interruption. Not progressing quickly. Not slowing down. Just existing in its fullest, most complete form. And in that completeness, everything feels held. Nothing demands attention. Nothing seeks change. The colonial town remains beneath the wide, patient sky, resting in the deepest part of the night, where even time feels soft, and the world is held in a calm that does not need to end to be understood. The night begins to feel different, though nothing has visibly changed. It is still dark. Still quiet. Still full of that deep, steady calm that has carried the town for hours. And yet, somewhere in the feeling of it, there is a subtle shift so small it almost cannot be named. Not an ending. Not a beginning. Just a soft loosening in the weight of darkness. The colonial town remains asleep. Every home still holds its own quiet world. Every window still reflects only faint, distant moonlight. Every street still lies empty beneath the sky. But the night itself feels slightly less absolute than before. Inside one house, a lamp burns very low now. Its flame is small, steady, and patient. It does not flicker much. It simply continues, like a final thread of warmth holding the room together. A sleeping figure turns once beneath a blanket. Then becomes still again. No awareness follows. Only rest continues. Outside, the air feels even quieter now. Not because sound is gone, but because sound has become so rare that it feels distant from everything. The wind is almost absent. When it moves, it does so gently, without direction, as if unsure whether it is still needed. The fields beyond the town remain fully still. Grass and earth are unchanged in shape, unchanged in tone, but the darkness above them feels slightly less dense than before. The sky remains filled with stars. but their presence now feels more distant, as if the space between earth and sky has grown softer. In one home, a window catches a faint change in tone. Not light yet. Only the slightest easing in the darkness outside. A subtle transition that does not reveal itself fully, but suggests itself quietly. Inside, the room remains warm. The lamp continues its low glow. A chair rests where it was left. A table holds simple objects in stillness. Everything remains undisturbed. Across the town, the feeling of deep night continues, but it no longer feels as heavy as it did earlier. It feels closer to something waiting. Not in urgency, but in patience. A long, quiet patience that does not need to be acknowledged to exist. A distant sound appears once more from beyond the town. So faint it almost blends into imagination. It does not repeat. It does not grow. It simply exists for a moment and then fades. The night does not respond. It remains steady. Inside another home, a lamp is adjusted slightly lower. The light becomes even softer. The room becomes even quieter. The shadows deepen just a little more in the corners, but they do not feel separate. They feel natural. Like part of the room's resting state. A person breathes slowly in sleep. No change in rhythm. No awareness of time passing. Just the continuity of rest. Above, the sky remains unchanged in form. But the horizon holds a faint, almost imperceptible shift. A softness that did not exist earlier in the night. Not color. Not brightness. Only a loosening of darkness at its edge. The colonial town does not move. It does not wake. It does not change its state. It remains fully within night. But the night itself is beginning to hold a different quality now. Less absolute. More patient. As if it has begun to prepare, without announcing anything, for what will come after it. And so everything remains still. Everything remains quiet. Everything continues in that deep, steady calm where night and the earliest hint of something beyond it exist together without conflict, beneath the wide, unbroken sky. The night is still here. But it no longer feels alone. There is something beside it now, quiet, distant, almost invisible at first but present in the way darkness no longer feels as complete as it once did. The colonial town remains asleep beneath the sky. Every roof, every street, every field beyond the edge of the town is still wrapped in night. And yet, the night itself feels gentler. Not fading quickly. Not breaking apart. Just loosening, slowly, as if it has begun to rest differently. Inside the homes, the lamps are at their lowest now. Their light is faint, but steady. It no longer defines the rooms. It only accompanies them. A soft presence that holds the edges of the space together while everything else rests. A sleeping figure breathes deeply in one house. The chest rises. Falls. Nothing more. No disturbance follows. Only continuity. Outside, the town remains still. But the sky has changed in a way that cannot be easily pointed to. The stars are still visible, but they feel more distant now, less sharp in their presence. The darkness between them is no longer as dense. It has softened. The horizon holds the first nearly invisible trace of change. Not color yet. Not light yet. Only a faint easing, like the world slowly remembering that it will soon turn again. The fields beyond the town lie in complete stillness. Grass does not move. Trees do not sway. Even the air feels settled into a deeper calm, as if it is waiting without expectation. Inside one home, a lamp flickers once softly, briefly then steadies. The room remains unchanged. A chair stands near the table. A cup rests where it was left. A folded cloth sits quietly on a wooden surface. Everything feels complete in its stillness. No action is required. No movement is needed. Outside, a very distant sound appears again. So faint it could be mistaken for memory. It does not return. It does not grow. It simply exists for a moment, then dissolves back into silence. The night continues to hold the town. But now it feels less like something heavy resting on the world, and more like something gently surrounding it. A softer presence. A quieter embrace. Above, the sky remains vast and dark. But the edge of the horizon now carries a subtle difference. A nearly unnoticeable thinning of darkness, like fabric stretched just slightly lighter than before. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. But it feels slightly closer to the surface now. Not breaking. Not ending. Only shifting into a lighter form, as if rest itself is becoming less deep. A hand relaxes further under a blanket. A head turns slightly on a pillow. Then stillness returns. The town does not react to these small movements. It simply holds them, gently, as part of its shared calm. The night is still present. But it is no longer absolute. It is no longer complete in the way it was earlier. Something is approaching, not loudly, not quickly but steadily, beyond the edge of perception. And so the colonial town remains in that quiet threshold, where night has not yet ended, and morning has not yet begun, but both exist faintly in the same still air, beneath the wide and patient sky that waits without hurry for what comes next. The change does not announce itself. It simply becomes more noticeable, little by little, like something that has always been there but is only now being understood. The night is still present over the colonial town. But it is no longer complete in the same way. A softness has entered it. A quiet thinning that cannot be seen directly, only felt in the way darkness no longer feels as deep or absolute as before. Inside the homes, the lamps remain low. Their light is steady, but it no longer feels like the only presence in the room. There is something else now. Something faint. Something distant. A suggestion that space beyond the walls is beginning to change. A sleeping person shifts slightly. The movement is slow, natural. Then stillness returns. No waking follows. Only a lighter form of sleep, as if rest itself has become less deep without losing its calm. Outside, the town remains still. But the sky is no longer the same sky it was an hour ago. The stars are still there. Yet they feel more distant now, as if the space between them and the earth has grown softer, less defined. The darkness is no longer uniform. It carries a gradient now, subtle and wide, stretching across the horizon where something is beginning to form. Not color yet. Not brightness. Only the earliest presence of change. In one home, a window reflects a faint shift. A barely visible difference in tone beyond the glass. It is not enough to illuminate anything. Only enough to suggest that the world outside is no longer fully in night. Inside, the room remains warm and still. A lamp glows gently. A chair sits where it was left. A table holds quiet objects in familiar arrangement. Everything is unchanged, yet somehow part of a larger transition that is slowly unfolding. Outside, the fields beyond the town begin to feel slightly more open. Not because they are visible differently, but because the darkness over them is becoming less dense. The land is still resting. Still unmoving. But the sky above it feels less heavy now. A distant bird calls once. Soft. Uncertain. It does not repeat. The sound fades quickly into the air, leaving no echo behind. The night does not respond. It continues, but more gently than before. Inside another home, a lamp is adjusted lower again. The flame becomes smaller. More intimate. The room deepens into shadow at its edges, but not into emptiness. Into calm. Into quiet presence. A person breathes slowly in sleep. The rhythm remains steady. But something in the atmosphere around them feels slightly lighter now, as if sleep itself is beginning to loosen at its edges. Above, the sky holds its vast dark shape. But along the horizon, something begins to form that was not there before. A faint, almost invisible suggestion of light. Not rising. Not brightening. Just existing at the boundary between night and what comes after it. The colonial town does not wake. It does not move toward morning. But it is no longer fully held by night either. It exists now in a delicate balance between what has been and what is slowly arriving. A balance so quiet that it feels like stillness itself has learned to breathe. And so everything remains calm. Everything remains steady. Everything continues under the wide sky, where the first breath of morning light begins to exist quietly beside the fading night, without interrupting it, without breaking it, only gently sharing the same vast and peaceful space. The night is still present, but it feels thinner now. Not weaker. Not ending. Just less dense, as if the weight it once carried has begun to loosen in quiet stages no one notices directly. The colonial town remains asleep in many of its homes. In others, sleep has shifted into something lighter, closer to the surface, but still unbroken. There is no sudden change. Only gradual transition. Inside one house, a lamp burns at its lowest point. Its glow is steady, but faint enough that the room feels shared between two worlds, one still held by night, and one slowly approaching from beyond it. A sleeping figure breathes slowly. The rise and fall of breath continues without interruption. Nothing disturbs the rhythm. Only time, soft and unhurried, moving forward in a way that does not ask for attention. Outside, the town remains quiet. But the horizon has changed again. Not clearly. Not dramatically. But enough that it can no longer be ignored if one were to look long enough. The darkness there is no longer uniform. It has begun to separate gently into layers, deep night above, and something softer beneath it, waiting without urgency. The stars are still visible, but their clarity is less sharp than before. They feel farther away now. Less immediate. As if the sky itself is preparing to shift its attention elsewhere. In one home, a window shows the faintest hint of change outside. Not light yet. Only a subtle lifting of darkness at the farthest edge of the world. Inside, the room remains unchanged. Wooden furniture still. Lamp steady. Shadows resting in familiar places. Everything is calm. Everything is contained. Outside, the fields beyond the town are still completely quiet. But the sense of distance has softened. The land feels slightly closer to visibility, though nothing is fully revealed yet. A faint breeze moves once more. Gentle. Almost hesitant. It passes through the town without altering anything, as if even the wind respects the quiet transition taking place. Inside another home, a lamp flickers softly, then steadies. The room remains intact in its stillness. A chair. A table. A folded cloth. All unchanged. But the feeling of the room is no longer purely night. It is something between night and what comes next. Above, the sky begins its most subtle shift yet. At the horizon, where darkness once felt absolute, a pale suggestion begins to form. Not color. Not brightness. Only the faintest dilution of darkness, like ink slowly thinning in water. It does not spread quickly. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, growing gradually in silence. The colonial town remains asleep. But even sleep feels different now. Less deep. Less heavy. More open to the world around it. A hand relaxes further under a blanket. A face turns slightly toward the faint direction of the horizon. Then stillness returns. The town does not wake. But it is no longer fully enclosed in night. It exists now in a space where night is still present, yet no longer alone. Something is arriving. Not suddenly. Not loudly. But steadily, as if the world itself has begun to prepare for light in the same quiet rhythm it once used to prepare for darkness. And so everything remains still. Everything remains calm. Everything continues beneath the wide sky, where night and the earliest breath of morning share the same gentle space, waiting without urgency for the moment when one will slowly yield to the other. The night does not disappear. It simply stops holding the town so tightly. That is the quietest way it begins to end. The colonial town remains still beneath the sky, but something fundamental has shifted now in the feeling of it all. The darkness is still present, still wide, still covering rooftops and fields and empty streets. And yet, it no longer feels absolute. It feels like it is giving way, slowly, without resistance. Inside the homes, the lamps are now the smallest they have been all night. Their light is gentle, almost fragile, but steady enough to hold the rooms together. The glow no longer feels like it is pushing darkness away. It feels like it is simply existing alongside it, peacefully, without effort. A sleeping person stirs slightly. Not waking. Only turning, as if responding to something the body understands before the mind does. The breath remains slow. Even. Unbroken. Outside, the sky has changed in a way that is now undeniable if one looks carefully. The horizon is no longer fully dark. It carries a faint, soft gray-blue tone that was not there before. It is not yet morning. But it is no longer only night. The stars remain, but they feel quieter now. Less dominant. As if their presence has gently stepped back to allow something else to begin. In one home, a window reflects this change faintly. A thin gradient of lightless brightness gathering at the edge of the world. It does not illuminate the room. It only hints that change is continuing beyond what the eye can easily define. Inside, everything remains still. A chair. A table. A lamp. A folded cloth resting in its place. All unchanged, all familiar, all calm. Outside, the fields beyond the town begin to separate from darkness more clearly now. Shapes are no longer entirely lost. They begin to return in faint outlines: trees, grass, distant edges of land still subdued, but slowly becoming visible again. A bird calls once. This time, another answers somewhere closer. The sound does not break the silence. It joins it in a different way. A softer way. The wind moves again, but it feels warmer now. Less like night air. More like the early breath of a new day trying gently to exist. Inside another home, a lamp is lowered for the final time. The flame remains, but it is no longer needed as strongly. The room holds its own softness now, not dependent on brightness or darkness. Just presence. Just stillness. Above, the transformation continues. The horizon is now a quiet blend of deep night and emerging lightless dawn. Not one, not the other, but the meeting point between them. A space where everything feels suspended for a brief, delicate moment. The colonial town does not wake yet, but it is closer to waking than it has been all night. Sleep is still present, but lighter now. Closer to the surface. Easier to release, though not yet released. And so the town remains in this final, delicate balance where night is no longer whole, and morning has not yet fully arrived, but both exist together in the same calm sky, slowly, quietly, gently preparing for the world to turn again. There is a silence that belongs only to this moment. Not the silence of deep night. Not the silence of full morning. But the silence in between, where everything feels held gently, as if the world is waiting for permission to change. The colonial town rests inside that moment now. Still asleep in many homes. Lightly waking in others. But never rushed. Never disturbed. Inside the rooms, lamps are now extremely soft. Their glow is barely more than warmth in the air, shaping the smallest outlines of furniture and walls. Shadows no longer feel deep or heavy. They feel thin, almost transparent, as if they are preparing to leave without needing to be pushed away. A sleeping figure breathes slowly. Then shifts slightly. The movement is calm, natural, and unforced. Still not awake. Just closer to the surface of waking than before. Outside, the sky has changed again. The horizon now holds a clear, soft band of pale gray blue. It is wider than it was moments ago. More defined. Still gentle, still quiet, but undeniably present. Night is no longer complete above the town. It has begun to open. The stars remain visible overhead, but they feel distant now. Not fading quickly. Just becoming less central, as if the sky is slowly redirecting its attention downward toward the world. In one home, a window reflects a faint suggestion of this change. A soft, quiet glowless light spreading across the far edge of the sky. Inside the room, everything remains still. A lamp. A chair. A table. A sleeping presence nearby. Nothing moves with urgency. Everything continues in calm continuity. Outside, the fields begin to return in clearer form. Shapes that were once hidden are now faintly visible again. Trees are no longer just shadows. They have structure again. The land begins to feel present in a way it has not been since night fully arrived. A bird calls again. This time, the sound is slightly clearer. A second follows. Then another, farther away. They do not fill the sky. They only begin to reintroduce it. The wind is now noticeably gentler and warmer. It no longer carries the feeling of night's cool stillness. It carries the first softness of morning air, still quiet, still restrained, but changing. Inside another home, a lamp is finally left untouched for a long moment. Its flame remains steady but very low. The room feels complete without adjustment. As if nothing more needs to be done. A person shifts in sleep again. This time the movement lingers slightly longer before stillness returns. Waking is close, but not yet present. Above, the sky continues its slow transformation. The pale band at the horizon grows a little brighter. Not into sunlight. Not into color. Just into presence. A quiet acknowledgement that night is no longer alone. The colonial town is still. But it is no longer fully asleep in the same way it was hours ago. It is resting at the edge of waking now. Balanced between two states. Held gently between what has passed and what is about to begin. And so everything remains calm. Everything remains quiet. Everything continues in this suspended breath of the world, where night is ending without breaking, and morning is arriving without noise, beneath the wide sky that slowly prepares to open into a new day. It happens so quietly that it could almost be missed. The sky does not change all at once. It simply begins to hold less darkness. The colonial town remains still, but the feeling of night has now clearly loosened. What was once deep and complete darkness has softened into layers, no longer one solid presence, but something gradually thinning, as if the sky is gently releasing its grip. Inside the homes, lamps are at their weakest glow. Not fading in urgency. Just no longer needed in the same way. Their light feels like memory now, something that belongs to the night rather than something actively resisting it. A sleeping figure breathes in a slightly different rhythm. Still asleep, but closer to waking. The body already knows what the mind has not yet accepted: the night is ending. Outside, the horizon is no longer just gray-blue. A faint, almost invisible wash of pale light begins to spread beneath it. Not yellow yet. Not gold yet. Only the first suggestion that brightness exists beyond darkness. The stars are still there, but they feel quieter now. Less dominant. Less close. As if they are slowly stepping back to allow the sky to change its expression. In one home, a window shows this transformation more clearly. The world outside is no longer purely dark. Shapes begin to separate again: roof lines, trees, the faint outline of distant fields returning slowly, as if the world is being gently redrawn. Inside the room, nothing moves. A chair remains where it was left. A table holds still objects in familiar arrangement. A lamp glows very softly in the corner. Everything feels peaceful, complete, and unchanged. But the feeling of the room is different now. It is no longer fully night. Outside, the fields begin to show texture again. Grass is no longer just shadow. It becomes faintly visible in uneven tones, gently returning under the sky's slow brightening. A bird calls once more. This time, it is answered quickly. Then another joins. The sound is still soft, but more confident than before, as if the world is remembering how to speak again after a long pause. The wind shifts slightly. It is no longer only cool night air. It carries the first hint of morning warmth, subtle and quiet, like breath returning after stillness. Inside another home, a lamp is no longer adjusted. It is simply left as it is. The flame is minimal now, barely necessary. The room does not feel dark anymore. It feels naturally dim, as if light is beginning to exist without being asked. A sleeping figure turns once more. This movement is slightly longer than before. Still not waking. But closer. Closer than any moment before. Above, the horizon's pale band begins to widen. Not bright yet. Not golden yet. But undeniably present now. A soft boundary forming between what is ending and what is beginning. The colonial town remains in its final stretch of night. But that night is no longer complete. It is in transition. It is opening. It is releasing. And so everything continues in this quiet balance, where darkness no longer fully holds the world, and light has not yet fully arrived, but both exist together in the same calm sky, gently guiding the town toward its first real breath of morning. The change is no longer something subtle. It is still quiet, still gentle, but it is now unmistakable. Night is leaving. Not in a rush. Not in retreat. Just in a steady, natural release, as if it has completed its purpose and is allowing the world to turn again. the colonial town begins to awaken in layers. Not all at once. Not as a single moment. But piece by piece, home by home, breath by breath. Inside the houses, the lamps are now almost unnecessary. Their light is faint, more symbolic than functional. They remain lit only because the habit of night still lingers in memory. But the rooms are no longer dark. A pale, soft light from outside begins to enter through windows and small openings. It is not strong yet. But it is real. A sleeping figure shifts, then slowly opens their eyes. No sudden movement. No sharp awareness. Just a gradual return to consciousness, as if waking itself is careful not to disturb anything. The room is different now. Not because anything inside has changed, but because light has entered it. Outside, the sky has transformed further. The horizon is now a wide, gentle gradient of pale gray and soft gold. Still muted. Still early. But clearly no longer night. The stars have almost disappeared, though a few faint ones still linger high above, as if reluctant to leave all at once. The fields beyond the town are now visible in full outline. Trees stand clearly again. Grass shows movement in soft wind. The land feels fully present once more, no longer hidden beneath darkness. A bird sings more confidently now. Then another responds. The sound spreads gently, not loudly, across the waking landscape. It does not fill the silence harshly. It replaces it slowly, like light replacing shadow. Inside another home, a door opens. Very slowly. The person stepping outside pauses. Not in hesitation, but in quiet observation. The world feels renewed, but not new in a strange way. It feels familiar again. Returned. The air is cooler than midday will be, but warmer than night. It carries the freshness of early morning earth, of grass that has rested, of stillness that is now gently dissolving. The colonial town begins to show full detail again. Roofs regain color. Walls regain texture. Paths regain their worn familiarity under soft growing light. More doors open. More people step outside. But still no rush. No urgency. Only slow re-entry into the day. Inside the homes, lamps are now being extinguished one by one. Not abruptly, but with calm, practiced motion. The flame is covered. The wick dims. The light disappears quietly, as if it was never separate from the morning that is now arriving. The rooms do not become dark. They become naturally lit by the sky itself. A person stands near a window and looks out for a long moment. The town is awake now. Not fully active, but awake. Alive in a calm, steady way. Outside, the sun is still not fully visible. But its presence is undeniable. The sky is glowing now soft gold near the horizon, expanding slowly upward into pale blue. Morning has arrived. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But completely. And the colonial town exists within it, gently awake, quietly breathing under the first full light of day, as everything begins again in calm continuity beneath the open, peaceful sky. The morning does not demand anything from the town. It simply arrives, and stays. The light grows a little stronger now, but never harsh. It spreads across the colonial town in a steady, forgiving way, touching everything as if it already knows it all. Roofs warm slowly under the sun's early presence. Wooden walls regain their familiar tones. Paths become clear again, leading between homes, between daily routines, between quiet beginnings. The town is fully awake now. But it is not loud. It is not fast. It is simply alive. Inside the homes, the last traces of night are gone. Lamps are now extinguished completely. Their absence does not create emptiness, because morning has already filled the rooms in a different way. Natural light rests on tables, chairs, and floors, shaping the space gently without effort. A person stands in a doorway for a moment, looking out. There is no urgency in their posture. Only awareness. Only presence. Outside, the streets begin to form their daytime rhythm again. Footsteps appear at intervals. Doors open and close with soft familiarity. Small exchanges of greeting happen briefly, then fade back into the larger quiet of the morning. Everything moves, but nothing feels rushed. The fields beyond the town are now fully visible. Grass bends lightly in the breeze. Trees stand in steady calm. The land feels open again, no longer hidden, no longer suspended in darkness. A cart moves slowly along a road. Its sound is steady, unhurried, blending into the broader sound of the waking world. It does not interrupt the morning. It becomes part of it. Above, the sky has fully transformed. The pale gold near the horizon is now brighter, clearer, spreading upward into soft blue. The sun itself is present, though still low, its light gentle rather than intense. Everything it touches becomes warmer in tone, more defined, more awake. Inside one home, a table is set near a window. Light falls across it naturally. No flame is needed now. Only the morning itself. A simple meal is prepared with calm movements. Nothing rushed. Nothing delayed. Just steady continuation of life. Outside, more people are visible now along the streets. Some walking slowly. Some pausing briefly in doorways. Some tending to early tasks that belong to this hour of the day. The colonial town has fully returned to its daily rhythm. But the rhythm is soft. Balanced. Unforced. There is still a trace of the night in the quietness of movement. A memory of stillness that remains in the way everything is done slightly more gently than necessary. The wind moves lightly through the town. It carries warmth now, mixed with the freshness of early morning air. It passes through open windows, between buildings, across fields, without resistance. Inside another home, a chair is placed carefully near a window. Someone sits. Not to begin anything immediately, but simply to observe the morning as it continues to unfold. The town does not feel like it has shifted suddenly from night to day. It feels like it has slowly turned, like a page in a long, quiet book, revealing a new but familiar scene. And so the day continues. Steady. Gentle. Uninterrupted. The colonial town rests now in full morning light, where everything is awake, everything is calm, and everything moves forward at the natural pace of a world that has learned to begin again without haste. The morning continues, but nothing asks for attention anymore. Everything that needed to begin has already begun. The colonial town rests inside its own daylight now, not as something new or sudden, but as something familiar returning once again to its place in the world. The sun is higher than before, but still gentle. Its light spreads evenly across rooftops, streets, and open fields, without urgency, without force. It simply exists. And the town exists with it. Inside the homes, there is only natural light now. No lamps. No flicker of night remaining. Just the soft presence of morning filling every room, touching every surface, settling into every quiet corner. A chair remains by a window. A table sits undisturbed. A door opens and closes once, slowly, then stays open to the air outside. Nothing feels unfinished. Nothing feels rushed forward. Outside, the streets carry the soft rhythm of early day life. Footsteps come and go. Voices rise briefly and then fade. Simple movements continue, familiar, steady, unhurried. The fields beyond the town stretch wide under the open sky, fully awake, fully visible, fully calm. Grass moves gently in the wind. Trees stand in patient stillness. The land breathes in quiet harmony with the morning light. A cart moves slowly along a distant road, its sound blending into everything rather than standing apart from it. The town does not feel like it is changing anymore. It feels like it has returned to itself. Above, the sky is clear and open. Soft blue stretches endlessly overhead. The sun holds its place with quiet warmth, no longer rising in change, but resting in steady presence. Everything is illuminated, but nothing feels exposed. Everything is seen, but nothing feels disturbed. There is a kind of peace in this kind of daylight. Not excitement. Not conclusion. Just continuation. Inside one home, someone sits near a window without movement. Not waiting for anything. Not thinking of what comes next. Only being present in the quiet fullness of the morning. The town outside continues its slow, natural life. But even that movement feels like part of stillness now. A deeper stillness that exists beneath activity. A stillness that does not end when things move, and does not break when things are quiet. And so the colonial town remains. Not at a beginning. Not at an ending. But in the simple, steady existence of a new day that has already arrived and does not need to announce itself anymore. The morning holds everything gently. The light holds everything softly. And the world continues forward without hurry, beneath a sky that has fully opened, and a town that has quietly learned to simply live within it.